Hello, Louisville. Guess who's coming to dinner? Hello, Louisville. Welcome back to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I'm hoping everyone had a safe and thankful Thanksgiving. Hope you didn't gather too much with family members, putting folks in harm's way. We have to be careful about how we treat each other right now. Most of us understand that this pandemic is nothing to play with. And we have to be safe. We have to stay masked up and keep our distance, because the more we do that, the sooner things can get back to a new normal. You know what I mean? Tonight, our guest is the executive director of the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage, and that would be none other than Mr. Aukram Burton. How do, Mr. Burton?
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How about yourself?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Staying safe, staying out of the way.
I'm trying to, I have to do my little errands to get food and things like that, but I just stay out of the way.
I hear you. I really wanted to talk to you because I'm very proud of what you're doing down at the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. And I'm saying that because I want people to start to say the name. That is the name. Say the name. It's not just a heritage center,
right.
But, it's nice to know the name, wouldn't you say?
Yes. We've been going through a lot of dialogue about that, and we have accepted the fact that if we refer to it as the Heritage Center, that would be fine, but I think it's also good to, let people know that it is the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. The center actually started in the mid 2000s, but the concept started back in the 90s with a group of concerned community people who came together and formulated the African American Heritage Council.
Okay.
Which is the governing body of the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. And at the time, the then founding executive director, was Celeste. And they became popular because they went around various places, Louisville and Kentucky, and a lot of these historic markers that you see addressing African American heritage in the Commonwealth was actually done by the African American Heritage Foundation, the people at the time.
Okay.
People like Blaine Hudson and what have you were on that committee. And then what happened is that people said, well, look, this is too important. You need a space. All right. Okay. And at the time, the old transportation building on 18th and Muhammad Ali was owned by TARC, but it went back into the 1800s. It used to be the old trolley barn.
Okay, right.
And over time it became, once it no longer was a trolley barn, it became heavy equipment industry there. And over time, the buildings became in disrepair. And because of the machinery and the oil and the gas and what have you, it was deemed a brownfield. So it was just sitting there dormant.
Right.
And so someone said, well, let's test the soil and see what it would take to convert that, so there's no longer a brownfield. So that took place, and they figured out what they would need to do, how much dirt they would have to put in to really kind of change the condition of the soil. But at the same time, the bridges project was coming online. All right.
Okay.
The two new bridges that were built.
Right.
All right.
So we were the center was getting ready to take a back seat, huh?
Well, no. What happened was because the bridges project was part of the transportation cabinet of Kentucky, and that they were getting the money from the federal government, from the transportation folks in federal government, they decided that perhaps we could, and this is not done. I mean, you got to understand, there was a collective effort. You had a number of council people at the time. I believe they were called aldermen.
Alderman.
Yeah, they came together and they really lobbied and pressured the Congress people and things like that. And we were put in that Bridges Project bill. They came up with ways to do that. That's how we were able to get to 28 million to renovate the old trolley barn campus.
So you were a part of that funding.
Yes, but the hook was that we would provide training for African Americans to work on the Bridges Project. And so a part of the campus was going to be utilized for training. Because you know how that goes. I mean, whenever it's major construction projects, we the first, we don't really get included in that.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand. People like Reverend Coleman and what have you used to come and really struggle against the powers to be to make sure that we were included in that. All right, because it was our tax dollars as well, and that we should have the right to livelihood. So that kind of gives you kind of a background of how we came about and how we came to the center on 18th of Muhammad Ali. Now, what was really divine was the fact that where we're situated, you know, Muhammad Ali Boulevard was not always called the Muhammad Ali Boulevard.
Absolutely.
It was called Walnut Street. It was called Walnut Street, right?
Yes.
And Walnut Street was the epicenter of the Black community in Louisville. All right. We had businesses, clubs, you name it. It was referred to as the Harlem of the South. And that's because major musicians came through. Diana Washington performed at the Lyric and the Grand, all right, and she was a major. Helen Humes got her start on Walnut Street.
Right. Lionel Hampton used to play at the top hat.
Jonah Jones, Dickie Wells, you name it. Down. So we are blessed to be in an area that once was a thriving Black area. And the crime was in the 60s, they decided, and I'm talking about the powers to be in Louisville, that they were going to have urban renewal.
No, they were going to have urban removal.
That's what I refer to it as. Yeah. No, that's what they did. They removed.
That's what my mother called it.
The problems that we experience today is directly connected to that.
Still are connected to that.
Right. And so, you know, when we talk about that, we need to really understand our history and why we're in the predicament that we're in right now. You know, because Walnut Street went all the way down to 6th Street. But when they did the urban removal, all right, 9th Street was the divide. Because 9th Street was connected to the highway, all right? So anything west of 9th Street, you know, was our domain. And so 6th Street, you start at 6th Street all the way down to 22nd Street. That was, you know, that was a thriving community at the time.
Exactly.
And we're not only talking like the 20s, but we're talking even beyond that, because what you had was many prominent African Americans who were doctors, lawyers, and educators who could afford to buy those big mansion homes that you see in Louisville now, that many of them are in disrepair.
Right.
You know,
Chestnut Street, coming from like 28th and Chestnut all the way down Chestnut Street.
Right.
Those homes were where a lot of prominent Blacks lived.
That's right. So West Louisville was a thriving community. And the problem, I think, that really led to all of this was the fact that we had what we call desegregation. All right, because you got to remember that the Walnut Street was literally, if you're talking about 6th Street, 2 blocks over, 4th Street, many black
Right.
people couldn't go into stores and try on clothes or anything like that.
Right.
All right. But that was fine because many of the people that I talk to that frequent Walnut Street, they didn't want to go down there. They were
Right.
happy where they were.
Well,
And,
I lived through. I
mhm,
came up I was born in Beecher Terrace, and so knowing what my parents dealt with, my mother worked at what is called the Kentucky Towers now. It was the Kentucky Hotel. So that's where she worked, and so Walnut Street is where my parents, who were young living in Beecher Terrace, that's
right.
where their social activities happened. I mean, I remember the drugstore, the grocery store,
That's right.
Kinslow's.
The
I
chicken
remember
market.
all
You were
these
the chicken
places.
market right across from where the center is right now.
The
I
what?
understand. There was a live chicken market
Chicken, yes, on
right
the corner,
across.
because my church is on 18th and Chestnut, West
Right,
Chestnut.
right, right.
So, and my brother went to Madison, which was that apartment complex that's right across the street from the center. That
Yeah.
was Madison High School that turned into Russell Junior High School.
Yes. Right.
So I'm all coming up through all of this with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people call it the Russell neighborhood. What need to understand is that the neighborhood was named after Harvey C. Russell.
Harvey C. Russell, exactly.
Harvey C. Russell was an educator um, who, of course, a lot of educators lived in the Russell neighborhood and around Chestnut and Walnut and what have you. And his son went on to become the CEO of Pepsi Cola.
Right.
All right, he had his own company, and when Joe Louis, won his fight, he started selling this pop that was going. Why? I mean, people were just buying it. And
Mm-hmm.
Pepsi Cola said, "Well, wait a minute, we need him over here, man. He's a good
Right.
marketer, right?" And
Right.
so they got him over into Pepsi Cola, and he became a prominent people. Harvey C. Russell, his father, was the one who started the PTA, the Kentucky PTA, as we know it today. All right. African American educators, much of what you see with education in Kentucky today, it was basically pioneered by African American educators who were dedicated to education, despite the segregation and what have you. So Kentucky has a rich history, and this is the reason why we exist, is to really dive into that and to provide opportunities for people to understand the history of this Commonwealth, but also the history of the community. We're not just a Louisville-based organization. We are a statewide organization. In
Okay.
2011, Governor Stephen Bashir, the father of Andy Bashir,
Mm-hmm.
signed into law Senate Bill 64, making us a quasi-state agency. All right. So we have a seat on the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet.
Okay.
And so all the agency heads of organizations, state organizations that have to do with tourism, arts, and heritage sit on that cabinet. So I give you examples. One would be the Kentucky Center for the Arts,
For
Performing
the arts.
Arts,
Okay. Okay.
right? The Arts Council, the what is it? The fairgrounds, the horse park,
Okay.
the film office. There's a litany of organizations that are represented on that cabinet. And Secretary Mike Berry was just appointed by Andy Bashir. He is the secretary of that cabinet. All right.
Okay.
So I have monthly meetings with all the agency heads, to discuss strategies. Now, you got to understand, we've been going through a lot of political, maneuvering,
Before
going
you go
from,
there, let me ask you this:
uh-huh,
what what is what is the role
yes.
that you're working on, that you foresee the center playing in the community?
Well, our mission is to preserve and promote Kentucky African American heritage and the heritage that we share within the African diaspora.
Okay.
That is our mission. All right.
Okay.
And we've had programs that looked at local Louisville artists and cultural workers and educators to people in the state to people around the nation. We've had people from Colombia, Brazil, Africa. So all anything that's African or African American, that's what we're about. We're about educating our people and helping them to understand who they are and where they came from.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah, because Louisville has as they say, a plethora of educators. The history of education in this city is vast.
yes,
When you were talking about Harvey C. Russell, then we
hmm
deal with the Lyman Johnsons, and um, I just remember that there were so many people. I mean, even our political astuteness, like you were getting ready to go into the political realm, our political astuteness with the May Street kids and the Senator Georgia Powers. Because as a young girl, I used to work in each of their offices, after school. So I was exposed. I was exposed to some things that some people really don't know that I was exposed to. But because Louisville has a really rich history.
absolutely. I mean, I'm not from Louisville. I'm from. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay,
The,
all
the
right,
city of the
that's all
city
right.
of
We've Have you
the,
been here longer than 5, 10 years?
I've been here since '99. My wife and I,
Oh well, see,
you know, you know.
you become a Louisvillian after you stay so long. If you
Well, I
say
mean,
up here and down there and over there too often.
I'm fascinated with the history. I mean, like for instance, just the idea of a community naming itself Little Africa.
Yeah.
To me, that's where we need to look at that and really unpack that. All
Mm-hmm.
right, because I think that's important. Because part of I think one of our struggles as a people is that we have been stripped of our history and who we are as
Right.
a people. All
Right.
right. But somebody had the consciousness during that time to coin that community, Little Africa.
Little Africa. Yeah.
Right. Little Africa.
It's
So for
not.
me,
There was a just the other night another area that was on the news. A documentary I was watching about a place called Africa Town.
down in Alabama. Yes.
I knew nothing about it.
Oh yeah.
So
That's yeah.
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they can actually trace their ancestors from that ship,
Yeah.
that slave ship.
Yeah. We should be proud of our heritage as African people. All right. I think
Absolutely,
part of our
absolutely.
problem from a psychological and spiritual perspective is that we have a lot of self-hatred about that. You see,
Okay.
and I think that we have to resolve that. That's something that we have to do internally. I'm not saying
Right.
you got to go back to Africa, whatever. If you want to, fine. I mean, I've been back and forth to Africa, and it's certainly a bridge for you to do that.
Right.
But you need to at least accept. When you listen to those people on that program who
Right.
had descendants from Africa, they were proud.
Very proud. Very
And
proud.
that's what we need people to understand is that when Europeans came into Africa, all right, they didn't pick up slaves as the history teaches kids in school.
Right.
They
They
went
picked
into
up
Africa.
queens and
Well,
kings.
I won't go down that road, all right, because I
Okay.
think that's certainly we had royals that were part
We
and
had
part of the
okay.
piece.
We
But
came
what
from
they did
royalty.
do is they picked up skilled people who were
Okay.
ironsmiths, people who were artisans.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the plantation owners needed. They needed craftspeople to help them to build and to maintain their plantations.
Right.
All right. And then, of course, they needed laborers out in the field and things like that. But a lot of times, when the plantation owners would put in their order, they would put in an order specifically for blacksmiths or iron workers and things like that. You see,
Okay.
because they needed those kinds of skills. And it reminds me of what we're going through today in this country in terms of the work that most Americans don't want to do, and the immigrants, so-called illegal aliens,
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that's doing the work.
Right.
It's the same thing. We
Same
just
thing.
doing the same thing all over again. But I think that we need this current situation that we have experienced in the last 9 months or so is a wake-up call. All right.
Right.
Okay, so we had the pandemic. All right. And they said the pandemic was it actually mirrored the pandemic of 1918.
1918. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Spanish
And yeah, the so-called Spanish flu. All
flu.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't understand is shortly after that pandemic, there was another pandemic. That was the 1919 Red Summer, where thousands of African Americans were killed in the street by whites. All right.
In Tulsa.
No. This is nationwide.
This was
Just
just
check it out. Red Summer. Let's talk Red Summer. This is shortly after World War One. All right. Blacks, just as we did in World War II and the Vietnam War, demanded that we wanted our fair share within the American dream. All right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whites went crazy, started going out killing black people. All right. Now, 100 years later, we experiencing almost a similar situation. All right. So history is important. All right. And if you really look at history deeply, this is my theory, you're bound to get a black eye.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we're in there somewhere, you see, especially history.
Well, we're all over it.
Right.
They that's why they say his story.
Right. No, it's our story.
What we've been given is his
Right.
story, but
Right.
what having centers like the African American Heritage Center is where we can find our history. Now you're going to have something at the center that helps us kind of trace our heritage. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there's a multiple levels to that, right? Because
Okay.
we are looking at it from the point of view that we have to get back to telling our story.
Our story, right?
First of all, our individual story.
Okay.
Each individual that's watching this program tonight has a story, and they should find ways to tell that story. All right. But then as a community, we have our story, and
Right.
we have to collectively figure out how we're going to tell that story. This is very congruent with what we are about as a center. All right. Because telling our story is about telling the history and heritage of our people. And there are multiplicity of ways of doing that. What you were referring to is that we have established the Oral History and Genealogy Center. All right. We had it renovated. We have it. We have the furniture in there. We are in the process of trying to fundraise to get the computers, and it will be a computer center there that the community can come in and access information so that they can do genealogical research.
Right.
But it's genealogical research is just not enough, because really where genealogy starts is with oral history. All right.
Okay. Okay.
All right. What I would encourage everybody that's listening to this program is that you may not have the tenets or the understanding of genealogy, but what you can do right now is to make sure, number one, that you write down your story first.
Right.
And then you go and you interview Big Mama. You interview the oldest person in your family, get them on tape, and then transcribe that. All right. And go down the list so that you can preserve your family history, because they will be gone one day and that will go with them.
Absolutely.
All right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it starts with oral history. It starts with oral history. All right. Then we can do the deep dive and start looking for the genealogy, because genealogy is a little bit more involved.
Right.
So one of the things, we've had several genealogy workshops. We brought in Tony Burrows, who's from Chicago. He's the preeminent genealogist, Black genealogist in the country. He's got a book out on Black genealogies. You can go to Amazon and check it out. But we've had 4 workshops with him. We brought him in. We've been slowly developing a cadre of people who are interested in genealogy. I haven't done it yet, but I plan to connect with the genealogy organization that exists here, the Black genealogy organization that exists here in Kentucky.
Okay.
But
so we have one here in Kentucky.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, okay. Yeah. So one of the projects that I'm really excited about, Tony gave us this idea, because Tony travels around. Tony has consulted most of the stuff you see on Oprah and Louis Gates. Tony's the one that's done the research for it, because they get up and they talk about what they found, stuff like that. They didn't find anything. It was the researchers that found it, right? And they basically presenting it for the audience. But Tony has been involved with Oprah and with Henry Louis Gates. And one of the things that he said at one of the workshops is that one of the projects that we should be doing here, and he's encouraging this to happen all over the nation in Black communities, is to start collecting funeral programs. All right.
I know, you mentioned that about the obituaries.
Well, not just obituary, the funeral program.
The program itself. Okay.
When you go to a funeral, you get a funeral. They got the picture, the date of birth, and date of death. Then they have a list of all the family members. Now,
surviving family members.
Right. And then a little biography on the person's life.
Right.
Now, why is that important? Well, part of genealogy is about research. Right. All right. Now, those programs are not primary documents. All right. Meaning that like if someone passed in my family and I'm asked to put together the program, I put it together under stress and what have you. So there's bound to be some mistakes in there or misquoting and things like that. All right. So it's not a primary document. So what you have to do is you take that. So for instance, say 50 years from now, if someone accesses that about a particular person, in order for them to verify, they have to go and find the birth certificate and the death certificate to verify that those dates are correct.
They have to do all the research to make this person or individual a person. I mean, where they were when they were born. I know because I've done all that, and actually I collect programs.
Yeah,
I told you I have a folder full of programs. I mean, just since I've been home since 2015, my relatives, my mother's friends, I've got all these programs. And when you said that, I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll make sure
So why is that important? Why is that important, Janice? The reason why it's important is, say if we were to start collecting the programs now, and we create a database. We scan them and we create a database.
Right.
We have now the Louisville, Kentucky database on, I don't know what you would call it, funeral programs.
Right.
Right. So if there's a descendant of someone who lived in Kentucky, say 50 years, or 80 years, 100 years from now, all right, and we have that database that exists, they could refer to that database to help them to start. Because, as time goes by, you start losing bits and parts of history. All right.
Right. And you, just like you said,
Right.
you lose. I'm the next generation. My mother's generation, they are all gone except for I have one uncle.
But keep in mind that the reason why this is important is because Black genealogy is a fairly new area within genealogy. All right. And you run into roadblocks because of what they did to us, in terms of burning down our churches, which were repositories of history,
exactly,
things like that. So, we run into roadblocks in terms. So if we are talking about building up Black genealogy, we have to start creating a database now, all right, that will exist 100, 200 years from now, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, because, we may not be able to answer all the questions in terms of what happened on slavery and things like that.
Right.
But we certainly can control what's happening now and beyond.
And beyond.
And so that's what that's the whole purpose of that,
The center is gonna, I know there's another center that is pretty well known. And when I lived in New York, the Schomburg.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
an important center.
A very important center.
Got some serious archives. Serious.
And
the good thing about that is that it's part of the New York Public Library. See, and so
the Schomburg is part of the
But yeah, it's connected to the New York Public Library, which was a good move. And the number one thing about a library or museum is you need resources.
Right.
You need resources in order to do the work that you need to do. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's our struggle right now. One of the things that we were trying to do starting in September of 2019, we had Dr. Lonnie Bunch come to our center as part of a grand reopening of the center, because we felt, I started as the executive director at the center in 2015. And I worked very hard along with Hosea Mitchell and Patrice Taylor and a number of other volunteer folks, as well as part-time folk, to really change the perception of the center, because, they tried to really destroy us. When Celeste Lanier was the executive director, there was an accusation made that there was mismanagement of funds, which was totally bogus and not correct. But the damage had been done. All right. So the millions of dollars that we had raised, all right, to build that center, all right, had just basically fizzled, because people, when you got somebody accusing Black people of mismanaging funds, everybody gets cold feet. They don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yeah.
So when I came in 2015, the whole idea was just to change the perception of the organization, which I think we've done a good job. So I felt it was time for us to make a statement. And so that's the reason why we brought in Lonnie Bunch. And you were on the membership committee, so part of what we were trying to do is to link the membership recruitment to that. All right. So let
me interject. Let me interject, because you brought it up.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
You brought it up, and I had told you once before that I wanted to talk to you about something. I'm just a little bit of it, but it's around Celeste, because what happened to her is what happens to blacks on a lot of different levels in a lot of different areas. But when someone accuses you unjustly, it's an attack on your character.
That's right.
It's an attack on your integrity.
That's right.
And it transformed her life. I'm sure it has transformed her life. But she has handled it very well. But as we come about trying to grow the center, I think because we had nothing to do with what happened, but we need to acknowledge what happened to her.
Oh no, I do it every
I
time.
mean,
I don't.
right. But
I
I'm
never,
saying,
yeah.
it's not just a you say it or I say it.
Right.
It has to be. I think there needs to be a community acknowledgement.
What is
to her.
I've done that in several ways. We've done several things to recognize Celeste and the fact that she is the founding mother of the institution. All right, and as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm around, I will always make sure that people know that, and it will be a part of our story. But there's another element here, and I don't want to insinuate. I'm going to say this up front so you understand, but it is really, really kind of suspicious. So you got to understand that prior to all of this stuff, before the accusations, there was a lot of whispering going on. Why do we need two black institutions in our community? All right. Because at the same time that we were coming up online, the Muhammad Ali Center was coming up online. All right.
Okay.
And my most people responded saying these are two separate institutions.
Right? Totally different.
And nobody asked the questions about the multiplicity of white institutions. All right. That we so why can't we have two? I mean, we have the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. We have Roots 101, and I hope we have some more.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So you got to understand that, back then, people were kind of nervous, about institutional power. See, this is what black people need to understand.
About us having too much institutional power. Us having it.
Institutional power.
I just want to
institutional power.
I just want to say, if the fear is that, but I'm sure you're also saying that we too had brought up some of that fear.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't just white folks bringing up the fear.
We weren't clear. I mean, you got to understand that when this came out in different circles. When you're going into the funders and finding money and stuff like that, the question was, well, why do we need two black institutions? In other words, so that's how it plays out, because the bottom line
instead of why aren't there more black institutions?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So,
I just want to bring things into context.
Okay.
There were a lot of forces at play, and we should have had a political protocol person in place. All right. Now, what was really interesting is when the center first started, we had a Republican lobbyist in Frankfurt. All right. Because you got to understand, we have survived Democratic governors and Republican governors. Ernie Fletcher.
Right.
All right. We survived him. All right. Mm-hmm. We've been through, what's his last governor, the Republican governor's name? Bevin. All right.
Yes.
So people have to understand the nature of this thing, and understand what you're up against. It's not la land,
No.
It's very much a part of, the political apparatus. All right. And so what you have to do is to get them to understand, all right, the importance of the work that we do. All right. And you have to find different ways of doing that. And you have to leverage your political operatives to echo that.
Okay.
All right.
But we as a people also need to come together so we can speak in one voice.
That's the never-ending struggle.
We need to speak in one voice.
That's the
and
never-ending
and and
struggle.
and the fear element. See, I don't,
We have to get out of the crabs in the barrel
mm,
syndrome.
oh yeah,
We're still in that syndrome. We're still in the Willie Limp syndrome.
no,
You know,
we need
yeah,
to uplift each other. We need to uplift our community in the West. We need to uplift those that live in the West that don't have, um, that just don't have some of the upbringing, some of the tools, the opportunities that some of us have had. We can't leave them behind because otherwise our whole community will be overtaken or will be moved out, and it'll be something that we don't recognize. So I'm just saying this, it's been a, I've always had a feeling about um, being able to work together. And I've lived in cities where um, one reason I wanted to move to DC before I moved home was because I thought that was the one place that I saw blacks work together much better than any other place that I'd ever lived or
don't
I'd
believe
ever been. And it's probably the same thing there, but there's a time and place that we have to take over our own destinies.
that's right.
We have to be able to speak for ourselves. We have to speak truth to power in whoever's in power.
The truth to power is correct, Janice. I think you're right, but there's a element that we need to focus more on, and I'm not saying this in a mamby-pamby way, and that is um, love,
Ah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Because anything in nature, the function
Hmm.
of nature
Yeah.
is love. You
Yeah.
know,
That's how we
And
survive.
that's
That's
how we
how we
survive,
will survive.
right?
That's how we as a
It,
people have
it's
survived.
it's
Cause
it's
Big
not
Mama,
hatred. It's not hatred. It's not
nope,
malice.
nope.
It's not being judgmental or anything like that. It's about love, and it's
That's
about
actually how
accept,
we got here. That's actually
accepting.
how we got right
That's
here
right.
today.
That's right. That's right. And we have
Let
to
me ask
start
you this.
start there. We have to start there.
I want to know, how did the community respond to the center being a polling place for the elections? Tell me about that.
Well, I'll
Because
tell
I was
you,
excited.
we were first of all so happy to be able to be a venue for the voting. Because
That was a
I
wonderful
think
thing.
it provided a very important service to our community. And the times that I was there at the center, I was just so amazed and happy to see all those people coming through. We got so many messages on Google, and people texting me, thanking the center for doing this, and so they were just thrilled. And what was so beautiful is that the young people that came through, all right, and
Oh yeah.
first time voters, if the workers knew that they were first time voters, they got up and they cheered and clapped for
Oh,
them,
wonderful.
right?
Wonderful. Yeah.
And it was one kid that came in, and he came in with his father, and he dropped off the ballots in the box, right? Because they wanted to bring the ballots in, and I knew that he was. I said, "You a first time voter?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, go over into that room right there, because that's where they do the cheering." He said, "No, I already voted. My vote's in there." No, no. I said, "You need to go in that room and tell them you're a first time voter." And he went through the door. Right, everybody found out he's a first time voter, and they clapped and yelled and screamed.
Oh, that's
You know,
wonderful.
yeah. So it was, the atmosphere was really, really, really good. Now, it was a struggle because somebody called the health department prior to that, trying to imply that we weren't following certain guidelines. This is before polling even took place, and the health department came, and we showed them what protocols, because we're a quasi-state agency, so we have to
Right.
abide by the protocols that the governor puts out.
Right.
And so we had everything in place, and they were there for about 5 minutes. He said, "We've been getting these calls. People been calling in, but there were forces out there that were really trying to put a
Suppress
damper
the
on,
vote,
yeah, damper on
just
stuff.
voter suppression.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't really go that far, but I just found it really interesting that
Suspicious.
yeah,
Like they say, oh, that just seems so suspicious to me.
right, right.
Oh, this so suspicious bit.
But
Well,
you
Akram,
know,
I want to say um, I thank you.
thank you,
Uh,
thank you for having
I
me
look
on.
forward to helping with your membership drive,
Yes,
getting
good.
together and talking about that because I think maybe that was the fact that the center was a polling place might give a boost to some membership
Well,
because
yeah,
they
what's one thing? If I have a minute, I just want to explain one
sure.
thing that we're doing that I think is important for the public to know, that we have a whole nother building that's offline, right? It's
Okay.
called, we refer to as Building D right now, and we have already put together the designs. We've had the architects approve them. We're going to turn that into a media arts center, right? Because my background
Okay.
is in film and video production,
Okay.
and because we're a state institution, even though I travel around the state and things like that, we could be much more effective if we start to develop content that we can push out throughout the state. You know, with the technology we have right now in terms of internet, the things that you're doing, this is a good idea. We could be pushing it out to other parts of the state. So
Okay.
I tie that to the membership, because when we have the membership, we have to have something to offer to the people. All right.
Okay.
And so this media production facility, but it's also going to be training, right? So that means that we can prepare young people and adults for 21st century job skills.
Right.
All right. Because in order to learn the technology of media production today, that stuff is transferable across the board. All
Right.
right. If someone learns how to use, an editing software or whatever, that's translated into other things. They become more knowledgeable about how to manipulate the technology to get a certain end result.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what we're focused on. And I hope to pull you in, because I know you had a proposal a few years ago that you were pushing around in terms of involving young people, in the theatrical arts and what have you. All right.
Just to
And
run that one by you. It was called Louisville AllStars
right.
because Louisville is uh, a breeding ground of talent.
That's right.
We've always had live entertainment in this city.
That's right.
Uh, we're culturally astute, pretty
That's right.
much.
That's right.
But as far as going from one level to another level, to get into show business, to in front of the camera, behind the camera, just on the stage, acting, performance art is my expertise.
You had
And
to have me
I
back
wanted to
on.
teach, huh?
We had to have me back on, because I explained to you why Louisville is the way that you just described. Kentucky is a gateway state. All right.
Sure.
People were coming from the south to the north, from the north to the south. Our proximity to Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis,
So
Tennessee.
it's not, we didn't know whether we,
Right.
and to this day,
But
I don't think we're as much of a southern state as
no,
we are a Midwestern state.
Kentucky was confused on slavery. By the time they figured it out, it was too late. Slavery was over. You know,
Right.
uh, you know,
And the
uh,
Mason-Dixon line had a
right,
lot to do with, I guess, how
right,
we were to be presented in the country, our
yeah,
status, our
yeah,
place. We were
yeah.
above it or
But we
below
need
it.
to have more conversations about history. Our people need to take pride in it. The reason why we can sit here and have this conversation today is because we stand on the shoulders, the kids and
Right.
you name it. That we stand on their shoulders, and they figured it out. The reason why they figured it out is because it was passed on to them. You know,
Right. Exactly.
and what we had in the '60s, when I was an organizer, we had a saying, and that was, each one teach one.
Teach one.
Right. And that's what it's all about.
Well, I'm here for you.
Okay. Thank you. And good luck
I'm
with
on
your
board.
show. This is really good. Keep this up, and we need to get this syndicated.
Well, hmm. You think I don't want to get it syndicated?
We need to
That's
get
why I
this
got my own Roku channel,
Okay, all right.
so
Well,
we can put it out there. But
maybe
I just wanted to have conversations
when we
about
get the
what's
media center,
happening.
when we
The
get the
what?
media center together, maybe you could be one of the shows that we produce.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be honored, darling.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
thank you, Aukram.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
We'll be talking soon.
Okay,
And
definitely.
tell the missus I said hello.
Okay, I
And y'all
will.
stay safe.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Bye
darling.
bye.
Bye
Yeah.
bye. Wow, that was wonderful. I knew we were going to chew it up a little bit, and we touched on a lot of things uh, that are very important for you all to know about what that center is about, and why, as a community, we should be supportive of it, because it has everything to do with us and who we are and where we came from, and the betterment of us as a race, and us as Louisvillians, and us as Kentuckians. So just kind of keep your ear to the ground. Do some of the things that he said. Start getting that story from Big Mama or Mud did. Let them tell you what happened and how and when and who and what. And if you've got those family Bibles, my mother had a family Bible that started with the birth of her grandfather, which would be my great grandfather. And I am in possession of that Bible. Now, who I'm supposed to give it to, I have no idea. But right now, it's in my possession. It's an heirloom. That's probably one of the things that my mother most cherished uh, to have. And how she got it, I don't know, but she was the youngest girl. But just want to tell everybody, thanks for listening. Let us know if you liked it, share it, tell a friend, come back and see us. We're going to be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And soon we should be on Wave 3 come 2021 on Saturdays from 7 to 8. So just get ready, because I'm getting ready. And on that note, I just want to know, guess who's coming to dinner? Are you going to be there? I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye. Where'd you go? That was a good one, huh?
Still talking, ain't you? You still on?
Uh-uh.
Oh, he's gone?
Yeah. I was trying to talk to him.
You have to call him on the phone?